Rodrigo Duterte, the once feared president of the Philippines, was found dead just days after the International Criminal Court issued an arrest warrant for his crimes. Officials claimed natural causes, but behind closed doors, a hidden autopsy revealed something far more sinister. He had been poisoned. As his family mourned and his supporters questioned the official story, a web of corruption, betrayal, and international intrigue began to unravel, implicating powerful figures both within and beyond the Philippines. Who truly wanted Duterte dead, and why? What secrets did he take to the grave? Secrets that could bring down governments, corporations, and shadowy operatives from around the world. The hunt for answers would ignite a storm that no one could stop. On an ordinary Tuesday morning, the world woke up to a historic announcement. The International Criminal Court had officially issued an arrest warrant for Rodrigo Duterte, the former president of the Philippines. For years, Duterte had faced criticism for his brutal war on drugs, which left thousands of people dead, many of them without trial. Human rights organizations had long accused him of crimes against humanity, but he had always denied any wrongdoing and remained untouchable. During and after his presidency, the ICC's decision marked the first time an international body had taken formal legal action against him. Across the Philippines, reactions were mixed. Some cheered the move as long overdue justice, while others, loyal to the strongman leader, called it a political attack. Within hours, the news took over television screens, online platforms, and public conversations. In the capital, Manila, crowds gathered near government buildings, waiting for a response from local authorities. Would Duterte turn himself in? Would the Philippine government cooperate with the ICC? No one knew what would happen next. Rumors began to swirl that he was preparing a public statement, or that he might even flee the country to avoid arrest. But none of that happened. In fact, there was silence. The man who had once filled news cycles with his fiery speeches and bold claims had vanished from the spotlight. Just 2 days later, that silence was shattered by an even more shocking headline. Rodrigo Duterte was dead. The official statement claimed that he had suffered a heart attack while resting at his private home in Davao City. His spokesperson described it as a peaceful passing in his sleep, but the timing was too strange to ignore. How could the man survive countless controversies during his term only to die suddenly, right after facing legal consequences? Many in the country felt a strange mixture of relief and suspicion. While some believed it was a tragic but natural end, others immediately suspected foul play. Social media platforms lit up with speculation, from claims that he had faked his death to whispers of an assassination ordered from abroad. Official statements urged the public to remain calm and respect the family's privacy. But behind the scenes, questions were already being asked. Why was there no public autopsy? Who was in the house when he died? And why now, just after the ICC had finally taken its boldest step? Rodrigo Duterte's sudden death caught the entire nation off guard. Just days after the ICC issued an arrest warrant against him, the former president was reported dead in his sleep, the official cause listed as a heart attack. The announcement was brief and lacking in detail. Government officials called for national mourning, declaring him a true patriot, and urged the public to honor his legacy. But beneath the surface, something felt off. No one outside his inner circle had seen the body. There was no footage of his final hours, no hospital visit, no emergency response report, just a closed statement in a sealed casket. The secrecy surrounding his death sparked immediate suspicion. It didn't take long for whispers to turn into serious questions. Quietly, a leaked document began circulating among a select group of journalists and opposition figures. It was a summary from a private autopsy, one that had never been announced publicly. The report indicated the presence of a rare chemical compound in Duterte's bloodstream, one known to induce cardiac arrest, but nearly impossible to trace without specialized testing. It had been used in past political assassinations, but was virtually unknown to the general public. The implication was chilling. Duterte hadn't died from natural causes. He had been poisoned. As news of the autopsy leak spread through underground channels, panic began to grow. Who had ordered the poisoning? Why was it kept a secret? And if the government had hidden this information, What else were they covering up? Suddenly, the death wasn't just about one man. It symbolized something far more dangerous. If a former president could be quietly eliminated just as international justice closed in, then no one was truly safe. Theories began to multiply. Some believed the assassination had been carried out by international agents seeking revenge. Others blamed Duterte's former allies, afraid that he might expose their secrets if arrested. The Duterte family refused to comment on the leak, and government spokespeople denied its existence, calling it fake news. Still, the fear didn't go away. Security around government buildings increased, and state-run media began shifting focus to unrelated stories. But independent journalists and investigators kept digging. Behind locked doors and encrypted messages, people were starting to connect the dots. The official version of Duterte's death was beginning to fall apart, and the truth looked far more sinister than anyone had expected. In the days following the leaked autopsy report, a darker picture of Duterte's final moments began to emerge. While the government continued to insist that he died of natural causes, sources within the intelligence community started to speak anonymously. One insider claimed that Duterte had been under constant surveillance in the weeks leading up to his death, not only by international agencies, but also by individuals within his own government. Secret documents began to surface, showing detailed movement logs of his daily routines, lists of visitors, and transcripts of intercepted calls. These weren't part of any official case from the ICC. Instead, they appeared to come from an independent operation tracking him with high-level access. Even more disturbing was the sudden disappearance of two medical professionals believed to have been involved in the private autopsy. A nurse and a forensic pathologist both went missing just days after the report was leaked. Their employers stated that they had taken emergency leaves of absence and traveled abroad, but immigration records showed no recent departures under their names. Their homes were left untouched, and their families hadn't heard from them since. Friends reported that both individuals had expressed fear in the days before they vanished. Some said they were being followed. Others believed they had been silenced. Meanwhile, journalists attempting to investigate the case received anonymous threats. One editor reported that their newsroom had been broken into, though nothing was stolen except a single hard drive. Another journalist was injured in a suspicious hit-and-run accident after publishing a piece questioning the government's version of events. Despite growing danger, independent investigators continued to follow the trail, believing the missing medical staff had known something crucial, something that made them targets. Among the leaked documents was a file titled Case Blackbird, a code name no one had seen before. It included encrypted messages, timestamps, and surveillance photos from inside Duterte's compound. The images showed individuals dressed in civilian clothes, some carrying medical bags, entering the residence at odd hours. None of them were officially registered as visitors. Their faces were blurred, but one figure appeared consistently across multiple images. Whoever it was, they had been inside the compound hours before Duterte's death. With each new leak, it became harder to believe the narrative of a peaceful passing. The pieces didn't fit. Witnesses were vanishing, evidence was being buried, and surveillance showed signs of a planned infiltration. What had started as a controversial death was quickly becoming an undeniable cover-up. As the investigation deepened, toxicology experts who reviewed the leaked autopsy details pointed to a highly specific and rare poison, one that didn't occur naturally and wasn't easily available. It was a synthetic compound known only to a few military laboratories and intelligence agencies around the world. What made it particularly dangerous was its ability to mimic the symptoms of a heart attack while degrading quickly in the body, leaving minimal evidence behind. Only someone with significant resources and knowledge of chemical agents could have accessed it. This revelation shifted the theory from a local act of revenge to something far more calculated and global in scope. Researchers traced similar cases of unexplained political deaths in other countries and found a pattern. This same poison had reportedly been used in a handful of high-profile incidents, always involving controversial figures on the verge of testifying, defecting, or exposing powerful secrets. The compound was never traced to a specific country, but its use was considered a signature of operations designed to eliminate threats quietly and with deniability. Suddenly, the idea that Duterte had died naturally became even less believable. Attention then turned to how such a substance could have reached Duterte. According to internal records leaked from hospital security systems, no official medical deliveries had arrived in the days prior to his death. However, CCTV logs, some of which were mysteriously deleted before being recovered by private investigators, showed a vehicle with diplomatic plates entering the gated community where Duterte lived. The driver never checked in, and the car remained unaccounted for after the event. Investigators speculated that this vehicle could have transported the poison or the person who administered it. More unsettling was the timeline. The poison would have needed to be given to him only hours before his death for it to have the intended effect. That meant someone had to be close to him, inside the home, or trusted enough to bypass his security. This realization fueled suspicions of betrayal from within his own circle. Whether it was a longtime aide, a political ally, or even someone in his family remained unknown. The nature of the poison, combined with the secrecy around his death and the missing personnel, pointed to one conclusion. This wasn't the work of amateurs. Duterte hadn't been a victim of fate or age. He had been marked, targeted, and silenced with surgical precision. And whoever had done it had left almost no trace, except for the growing list of questions that refused to go away. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source, a former intelligence officer who had fled the country shortly after Duterte's death. Speaking through a secure channel, he released a series of encrypted files containing surveillance footage from inside Duterte's private compound. These recordings had never been acknowledged by the government, raising immediate questions about why they were hidden. The footage, grainy and time-stamped just hours before Duterte's death, revealed a mysterious figure entering the property through a rarely used service gate. Dressed in civilian clothing, the person wore a mask, gloves, and carried a small, hard-sided case. Despite the compound's tight security, there was no record of the entry in the official visitor logs. The figure moved with purpose, avoiding main hallways and sticking to the shadows. Multiple camera angles showed the individual bypassing security checkpoints that should have been manned at all hours. Investigators speculated that either the intruder had inside help or the guards were deliberately ordered to look the other way. Notably, one camera outside Duterte's bedroom cut out for exactly 47 minutes, starting just after the figure entered the residence. When the footage resumed, the person was seen walking out alone, still carrying the case. Duterte was declared dead less than 3 hours later. Analysts reviewing the footage were struck by the precision of the intruder's actions. There was no sign of panic, no uncertainty. Everything was methodical, as though the person had rehearsed the operation multiple times. This wasn't the work of a burglar or an amateur assassin. It looked like a professional hit, clean, calculated, and almost invisible. The timing also matched the expected window when the poison would have been most effective, confirming theories from toxicology reports. The footage spread quickly through underground networks and independent media, prompting more questions than answers. Who was the figure in the video? Why had the security system been selectively disabled? And why had the government concealed the existence of these recordings? A growing number of people began to believe that someone high up had ordered a digital cover-up to protect those responsible. As pressure mounted, officials dismissed the footage as doctored, but digital forensic experts confirmed its authenticity. The truth was becoming undeniable. Someone had breached Duterte's inner sanctum, walked directly into his private space, and administered a lethal dose of poison. The operation had been hidden from the public with chilling efficiency. Whoever this unknown figure was, they had just become the key to unlocking the conspiracy behind Duterte's death. As more information leaked, investigators began tracing financial documents that had been hidden for years under layers of shell companies and offshore accounts. These records painted a damning picture of corruption that went far beyond Rodrigo Duterte's war on drugs. During his presidency, large sums of money had quietly moved through secret bank channels linked to arms deals, private security firms, and even foreign contractors. The transactions were staggered, spread across multiple jurisdictions, and connected to names familiar in Philippine politics. It was becoming clear that Duterte had not acted alone. he had been the face of a much larger and darker network. One account in the Cayman Islands, flagged by a whistleblower from an international bank, showed over $20 million in unexplained deposits. Another in Singapore was tied to a firm that had received government contracts without bidding. These money trails led to powerful figures, retired generals, cabinet officials, and corporate executives, some of whom were still active in government. It raised a disturbing question. Had Duterte's death been orchestrated to protect these secrets? Journalists following the money discovered that a report prepared by Duterte in his final year as president, one never released to the public, allegedly, contained a list of high-ranking officials involved in criminal activities. Sources claimed the report was meant to be his insurance policy, a safeguard in case he was ever arrested or betrayed. But after his death, no one could find it. The report had vanished, just like the files from the compound's security system and the autopsy team. Adding to the suspicion, several individuals with links to Duterte's financial network began experiencing sudden accidents. A businessman known for handling Duterte's campaign funds was found drowned in his swimming pool. A former aide reportedly died in a gas explosion at a remote vacation home. Another, scheduled to testify before an anti-corruption committee, disappeared the night before the hearing. These incidents were dismissed by authorities as unfortunate coincidences, but they happened too frequently and too conveniently to be ignored. With each death, it became harder to dismiss the theory that Duterte had become a liability to those he once protected. As the ICC prepared to escalate its investigation, powerful figures behind the scenes appeared to be cleaning up loose ends. The corruption was no longer just a political stain, it was a motive for murder. Duterte, once untouchable, may have become the biggest threat to the very people he had helped enrich. As the conspiracy unraveled, attention turned to Duterte's closest allies, those who had once defended him fiercely in public, but were now behaving in strange and suspicious ways. Former cabinet members who had stood by his policies began distancing themselves, releasing carefully worded statements that subtly shifted blame or downplayed their past involvement. Some who had praised him just weeks earlier were now claiming they had warned him against certain decisions. The rapid shift in tone suggested something deeper: fear. Duterte's death hadn't just removed a powerful figure, it had created a dangerous vacuum, and no one knew what might come next. One particularly high-profile defection came from a former Justice Secretary, long considered one of Duterte's most loyal supporters. Days after the leaked surveillance footage was confirmed, she fled to Singapore under the pretext of a medical emergency. Anonymous sources later revealed that she had requested asylum and offered to cooperate with international investigators. Her flight sparked outrage among pro-Duterte factions, but it also suggested that there was more to the story. Perhaps she knew who had ordered the poisoning, or had access to the missing report Duterte had compiled before his death. Shortly after her escape, another former official died in a mysterious car accident along a highway in central Luzon. Witnesses claimed they saw his vehicle being followed by two unmarked cars before it swerved off the road. No CCTV footage was recovered, and the investigation was closed within 48 hours. This death, like the others, felt too convenient. It followed a pattern. Anyone suspected of knowing too much or showing signs of betrayal was either silenced or disappeared. At the heart of the growing fear was the rumored existence of a document Duterte had prepared before the ICC warrant. According to leaked messages between two members of his inner circle, the document was meant to be a last resort, an exposé of the full network of corruption, illegal deals, and secret alliances that had sustained his rule. The document was said to be stored in a secure location and programmed for release if he was arrested or killed. But no such release ever happened. Whether it had been destroyed, intercepted, or never existed at all remained a mystery. What was clear, however, was that the people Duterte had trusted the most were now scrambling to protect themselves. Former allies were turning on each other, driven by fear, guilt, and the desperate need to survive. The deeper investigators dug, the more it seemed that betrayal hadn't come from outside forces. It had come from within. As the chaos deepened inside the Philippines, investigators began uncovering signs that Duterte's death was not just a domestic affair. Hidden within the leaked surveillance logs and financial records were coded references to meetings with foreign officials, held off the books and far from the public eye. These meetings, some of which had taken place in discreet locations across Southeast Asia, hinted at backroom deals with powerful international players. There were mentions of private arms brokers, intelligence agents, and corporate representatives linked to global resource extraction companies. The files suggested that Duterte had entered into risky agreements during his time in power, agreements that may have backfired as global pressure against him intensified. Among the documents was an encrypted communication between a top Philippine military official and an unnamed foreign operative, discussing urgent resolution strategies following the ICC's arrest warrant. Investigators believed this vague phrase referred to contingency plans involving Duterte, should international prosecution become unavoidable. Whether these plans were diplomatic, coercive, or lethal in nature was left unclear, but the tone of the messages was ominous. It was increasingly evident that some global actors viewed Duterte not as a former ally, but as a liability, someone who knew too much, had said too much, or was threatening to reveal secrets that spanned borders. One leaked intelligence briefing, allegedly originating from a Western agency, included a risk assessment of Duterte's potential testimony before the ICC. The briefing concluded that such testimony could implicate not only Philippine officials, but also foreign contractors and intelligence partners who had worked with Duterte's administration during anti-drug operations and covert economic ventures. The possibility that Duterte might speak freely under pressure, or worse, turn on his former collaborators, could have motivated powerful interests to silence him before he ever reached a courtroom. Meanwhile, strange diplomatic moves added fuel to the theory. Within days of Duterte's death, several foreign embassies increased security or closed temporarily without explanation. High-level diplomats left the Philippines on unscheduled flights. These actions went largely unnoticed by mainstream media, but were flagged by watchdog groups tracking geopolitical developments. It was as if a silent storm had passed, and everyone who might have been caught in it was retreating quickly and quietly. What had once seemed like a local political drama was now beginning to resemble an international plot. If Duterte had been removed to protect secrets on a global scale, then his death wasn't just an end. It was a warning. And the message was clear. No one, not even a former president, was beyond reach as the investigation into Duterte's death progressed. The Philippines began to unravel in a way few could have predicted. The atmosphere in the country shifted dramatically. What began as whispers of conspiracy quickly transformed into widespread panic. Rumors of foreign involvement, hidden alliances, and the involvement of top-ranking officials fanned the flames of uncertainty. The government's continued silence only deepened the suspicions, and soon, protests began to erupt across the nation. On the streets of Manila, Cebu, and Davao, crowds gathered, demanding answers. Social media was flooded with theories, from claims that Duterte had been killed to prevent him from exposing global corruption, to more extreme suggestions that his death was part of a larger power struggle between rival factions within the Philippine government. Some protesters carried signs demanding the truth, others chanted slogans against foreign interference, while a few even accused the sitting president of being complicit in Duterte's assassination. Misinformation spread like wildfire as people scrambled to piece together the events that had unfolded in such a short time. In the midst of this chaos, an unsettling phenomenon occurred. People began to disappear. Activists who had been vocal about the need for transparency were abducted in broad daylight, while journalists investigating the case were harassed, threatened, and even attacked. Several prominent figures in the opposition were placed under surveillance, their every movement tracked by shadowy figures. It was clear that the country's sense of security had been shattered. A climate of fear had taken hold, as no one seemed sure who they could trust, not even those within the government. Amid this instability, some factions in the military began to make their own moves. Units that had long been loyal to Duterte's government started to take control of sensitive areas, airports, key government buildings, and media outlets. The military's sudden involvement raised alarms. Was it an effort to prevent further chaos, or was it part of a larger attempt to consolidate power? The possibility that the military might be stepping in to enforce a coup or protect certain interests was discussed openly in whispers, but no one could confirm it. The truth about Duterte's death seemed ever more elusive. His loyal supporters, once unwavering in their defense of him, were now divided. Some believed his death was a betrayal, while others believed it was a natural end to a tumultuous era. Amid this disarray, the ICC's investigation into his death grew more intense. International pressure mounted on the Philippine government to allow transparency, but the resistance only grew stronger. The people were left in limbo, uncertain of their future as political and economic tensions began to spiral out of control. In the streets, the fear was palpable. The Philippines, once a symbol of stability in the region, now found itself at the crossroads of a dangerous power struggle, with questions swirling about the real reasons behind Duterte's death, and whether anyone would ever know the full truth. As the months passed, the shockwaves of Duterte's death continued to reverberate, both within the Philippines and around the world. International bodies, including the United Nations and various human rights organizations, demanded a full investigation into the circumstances surrounding his demise. Yet despite growing pressure, the Philippine government maintained a wall of silence. In private, some officials seemed to be operating in a state of heightened paranoia, unsure whom they could trust. The nation was fractured, with various factions scrambling to either protect themselves or gain power in the wake of Duterte's sudden removal. The international community, meanwhile, began to take matters into their own hands. Behind closed doors, countries with vested interest in the Philippines began to quietly pull strings. Some called for the Philippines to be suspended from international trade agreements, while others, including neighboring Southeast Asian nations, pushed for the establishment of a multinational inquiry into Duterte's death. It was becoming clear that his death was not just a personal tragedy, but a geopolitical crisis. The presence of foreign money and covert international deals, as revealed through the leaks, hinted at a broader network of influence that transcended national borders. The investigation into Duterte's assassination stalled, but whispers of a deep state in the Philippines gained traction. Some believed that a powerful group of elites, military leaders, business tycoons, and foreign operatives had orchestrated his death to keep their own illicit dealings under wraps. With the country's most powerful figures either implicated or remaining mysteriously silent, any potential for justice seemed distant. But even as the official investigation faltered, the truth continued to surface in ways that couldn't be ignored. More whistleblowers came forward, some from within Duterte's own inner circle, claiming that his death had been orchestrated to prevent him from testifying about the darkest secrets of the Philippines' political elite. Rumors of a missing, smoking gun document, the one Duterte had supposedly prepared to expose widespread corruption, kept the public on edge. Some believed it had been destroyed before it could be revealed, while others thought it was hidden away, waiting for the right moment to be released. As of yet, it remained elusive, like the final puzzle piece of a conspiracy too vast for most to comprehend. In the streets, people grew weary. They were tired of waiting for answers that seemed perpetually out of reach. Protesters, activists, and everyday citizens rallied in smaller numbers, their calls for truth overshadowed by the increasingly volatile political landscape. Those who had once believed in Duterte's tough rhetoric were now torn, realizing they had been complicit in the system that had enabled his rule. The death of Rodrigo Duterte had set in motion a series of events that no one could control. The nation was left to pick up the pieces of a broken democracy, with the specter of corruption hanging heavily over the government. As the months turned into years, the mystery of Duterte's death remained unsolved, an enduring enigma that would haunt the Philippines for generations to come.